Hello, my friends. It's Tuesday, April 29th, 2025, and I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, your Red State refugee, and welcome to the Radical Russ Show, coming to you from Rolla J Studios in my undisclosed mountain hideaway in the beautiful state of Jefferson region of Southern Oregon. I've got an amazing show to bring to you today, starting off with good news for once. The announcement of the 2025 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees. I'll give you my opinions on all the selections, including one of my favorite people in the world, bass player extraordinaire Kaye. And I'm going to be playing her bass lines as our interstitial music for today. See if you can guess which songs they come from. And my apologies in advance because I'm nowhere near as good a bass player as Kaye. Also, news from our Congress where Gerry Connolly, the 70-year-old in charge of oversight who got the job over Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has announced he's leaving the job. We'll tell you why. Also coming up, we've got the first 100 days of the Trump maladministration that's been shocking in so many ways that it even got me to agree with Alex Jones. Oh my God, that guy's still around? We'll also give you a look at the Canadian elections where the Liberals won big and the Conservatives didn't even win their own seat. All of the results that we've got for you. Amnesty International's out with a new report claiming that Gaza is a live-streamed genocide. We'll give you some of the statistics behind that. In our regular Boycott Idaho segment, we've got horrifying news on one county's cooperation with the ICE Gestapo. And in the Radical Rant, I'll tell you about how I, as a little boy, discovered the concept of bullshit. All that is coming up on the Radical Russ Show. But before we get to all that serious stuff, just wanted to make note of a photo I saw yesterday that showed Donald Trump there holding court at Mar-a-Lago, and who should be there sitting beside him? The only black person in the frame, Saquon Barkley, the running back from the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, who apparently had a golf outing with Trump the other day. And we just want to remind Saquon that everything Trump touches dies. So if you've got any bets on Saquon Barkley having a record season, I would cancel those bets because I wouldn't be surprised if he goes down with injury this year. I'm serious. Everything Trump touches dies. Appearing with Donald Trump is the kiss of death, and this could be the end of Saquon Barkley's career. We shall see how it plays out over the NFL season. In other news as well, Jalen Hurts, the quarterback from the Philadelphia Eagles, has announced he will not be attending as the Eagles visit the White House to be feted by the orange Cheeto Mussolini. So good on Jalen Hurts for standing up for something, and bad on Saquon Barkley for playing golf with Trump. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has made their announcement for their 2025 inductees, and I've discussed this before, how the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame takes everybody from every genre. There's Country Hall of Fame, there's Jazz Hall of Fame, there's Blues Hall of Fame, there's Hip Hop Hall of Fame, and rock and rollers can't get into any of those halls of fame. But everybody gets to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That decision was made long ago. I still kind of wish there was just a plain old rock music Hall of Fame, but we'll take all comers. At least this year, the inductees are mostly rockers. Bad Company is being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, one of the great bands. Always one of my favorites when a band has an eponymous debut album that has a title song from that album. Bad Company's album Bad Company featuring the song Bad Company. Gotta love that. Chubby Checker being inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Of course, one of the early influencers with the twist. Joe Cocker, the English singer, amazing singer who, of course, deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Performances at Woodstock were legendary. Cyndi Lauper, the 80s rocker, into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I don't know, people may not consider her a rocker, so to speak, but I think she rocks pretty hard. We got Outkast, the duo from Atlanta, the hip-hop duo. And I do believe the last full album I ever bought was Outkast's album, on physical media anyway. So great to have Outkast in there. Although, again, hip-hop, not rock. Soundgarden into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, well deserved. A shame Chris Cornell is not with us to enjoy this induction. What an amazing Seattle grunge group they were. And the White Stripes, Jack White and Meg White being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. All of them being inducted in the performer category. In the musical influencer category, they are inducting Salt and Peppa, the rap trio, and Warren Zevon of Werewolves of London fame. Okay, although I think that's one of the most annoying songs on the planet. I do think Warren Zevon's an amazing artist, though, and does deserve his inclusion. And I want to get to one of the Musical Excellence Awards people, which includes Tom Bell and Nicky Hopkins, but the person who stands out for me, and the person whose bass line you heard at the introduction of this segment, Carol Kaye. Carol Kaye played the bass line on that wonderful old song that you love. And no matter what song you were just thinking of, there's a good chance I'm right. She played on over 10,000 sessions, and throughout the rest of the show, I'll be playing some of her most famous bass lines. Not as well as she does, but I'll be playing those for you. Great to see Carol Kaye getting inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Although Carol, if you check out her website, carolkaye.com, and that's Kaye, CAROLKAYE.com. I think her website was written sometime in the late 90s, maybe the early 2000s. Maybe find yourself a web designer, Carol. Update that for the modern times. Boy, brought back some old memories of some of my old websites as well. Carol Kaye is an amazing talent and appeared on so many tracks from the Beach Boys, Quincy Jones, Joe Cocker, Sonny and Cher, Nancy Sinatra. She even played on Rick Springfield's first album way back in 1974. It's amazing. If you check out her biography out there at discogs.com, that's where you find all the credits for record albums and who played on them. You'll be just amazed at all the lines she played. So congratulations to Carol Kaye and all of the other 2025 inductees to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Today marks the first 100 days of the second Trump maladministration, which has proven to be so much worse than the first go-round. Obviously, the first go-round, just a dry run for installing fascism in the United States. They came around the second time with their Project 2025 playbook, and they are executing every chapter and verse within it. You can't say we didn't tell you so. Let's take a look behind the numbers at some of the first 100 days statistics. When it comes to executive orders signed by Trump, he has set the modern record. Of course, this whole first 100 days thing goes back to President Roosevelt and the New Deal that he signed into legislation and executive orders throughout his first 100 days. That's what set the standard for the first 100 days. Roosevelt was so productive and put out so many executive orders that kind of set the precedent. And back then in 1933, Roosevelt had signed 99 executive orders, and that's what made it stick with the public, the idea of the first 100 days. And following Roosevelt, no other president had signed any more than 42 executive orders. And that was Joe Biden in 2021 in his first 100 days, signed 42 executive orders. Before him, Trump in his first term, first 100 days, only signed 33 executive orders. And prior to that, it was less than 30 for all of the other presidents: Obama, Bush, Clinton, Reagan, Carter, Nixon, Kennedy, and so forth. 23, 25, 29, so forth executive orders. Donald Trump in his first 100 days has signed 142 executive orders. 43 more executive orders than Roosevelt signed. And when it comes to those executive orders, 100 of them have been Biden orders that have been overturned or reversed. He rescinded 78 of Biden's executive actions related to climate change, COVID-19, and DEI. He's also revoked Biden orders on voter registration and the census. By comparison, on the legislative side, he has also set a record, a new low, for only 5 bills being signed into law. The Laken-Riley Act, aka the Show Me Your Papers Act, the one that was approved by 48 congressional Dems and 12 Senate Dems, that Laken-Riley Act, he signed that one, as well as some funding bills and 3 Congressional Review Act resolutions that overturned Biden rules. So really, the Laken-Riley Act is the only law that's been passed in the Trump first 100 days. This breaks the record low of George W. Bush, who only signed 7 laws in his first 100 days. Contrast that to Trump's first term, and he signed 28 laws in his first 100 days back in 2017. Biden signed 11 bills into law in his first 100 days. When it comes to lawsuits, there are over 210 lawsuits in effect right now over the Trump maladministration's actions, and this is reflected in his approval rating, sitting now at 42%, according to the latest NPR PBS Marist survey. Other surveys out there, I've seen him as low as 39%, some of the lowest ratings of the first 100 days of any president, and much lower than his ratings during his first 100 days the first time around. In his first term, Trump's approval rating never got higher than 44%. He left office with a 38% approval rating, and nearly half the respondents in the survey, 47%, say that Trump would be remembered as one of the worst presidents in history. By contrast, when Biden completed his first 100 days, he was sitting at 53% approval rating. In the area of pardons, of course, Trump has pardoned 39 people directly, but also over 1,600 people involved with the January 6th insurrection, many of whom had prior criminal records. And when it comes to the layoffs, of course, Trump has laid off tens of thousands of federal employees, over 75,000 federal workers so far in the first 100 days. And of course, all of the policy actions of Trump, including this mass deportations now, the exiling, kidnapping, rendition of even American citizens now. We've talked about yesterday the 2-year-old, 4-year-old, and 7-year-old American citizens who've been exiled by this president, and his abuse of the law and his calling for the use of the Alien Enemies Act to even go after American citizens who've committed crimes, to ship them off forever to our concentration camp in El Salvador, has netted for me the most unlikely of supporters.
And I think it's way more dangerous, Trump saying we're looking to deporting citizens to El Salvador. Now that's unconstitutional, and that is really bad.
Yeah, folks, when Alex Jones is agreeing with me as far as Donald Trump going too far, you know Donald Trump has really gone too far. And speaking of Alex Jones, why is this guy still on the air? How is it that I'm able to go online and still find his InfoWars clips on the air? Wasn't all this stuff supposed to be sold in bankruptcy proceedings to pay off the Sandy Hook families that he smeared, that he lied about, that he caused so much anguish to? I mean, I'm glad he's on the right side of this issue, but if you ask me, Alex Jones ought to be behind bars. We've got some news coming in from the House Oversight Committee. The ranking member on the committee, Gerry Connolly, is resigning. He writes, "When I announced my diagnosis for cancer 6 months ago, I promised transparency. After grueling treatments, we've learned that the cancer, while initially beaten back, has now returned. I'll do everything possible to continue to represent you and thank you for your grace. I will be stepping back as ranking member of the Oversight Committee soon. All right, so Gerry Connolly stepping down, and of course, this is the seat that we had talked about last month when the Democrats were trying to elect the person who would be heading the very powerful Oversight Committee, an important post when we're talking about having oversight over the Trump maladministration. It came down to two candidates, Gerry Connolly, this man in his 70s who had already had a cancer diagnosis, versus Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And there was some hope that AOC would be getting this leadership position and be able to use her massive platform and incredible charisma to reign oversight on the Trump maladministration. But Nancy Pelosi, so dedicated to the seniority system that the octogenarian Democratic leadership can't let go of, whipped the votes to make sure Connolly would get the appointment over AOC. Now, nothing about Gerry Connolly to criticize necessarily. He's a good member of Congress. He's got a great voting record, but he's not the most charismatic guy, and he's a 70-year-old guy with cancer. And as we said at the time, it was a mistake because you never know if this cancer diagnosis could come back. He'd have to step down. So once again, let's give our kudos to the wise leadership of Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, who looked up for a second from her insider stock trading to make sure another septuagenarian would be able to stay in a leadership role and to be able to once again thwart the squad, thwart anybody on the left from rising in Democratic Party politics. But there is some silver lining to this dark cloud. The second ranking member on the House Oversight Committee is Representative Jasmine Crockett from Texas, the firebrand who has been rising in the Democratic Party politics for her plain-spoken ways. You remember her from calling Marjorie Taylor Greene a bad-built butch body, bleach blonde, bad-built butch body. I forget all of the B's. There were a lot of B's in it. So if we can't have AOC heading the Oversight Committee, I guess having Jasmine Crockett is a good follow-up. Last night was election night in Canada, and the fantastic news is that Mark Carney and the Liberal Party look to be winning the election there in Canada. And this is after polls had them far behind the Conservatives. It looked like the Conservatives were going to be able to take over the parliament until the rise of Donald Trump in the American electorate, and specifically his calling for Canada to be the 51st state. The moment Trump began starting to threaten Canadian sovereignty and beginning to jack up all of the tariffs on our neighbor to the north is the minute that the worm turned for the Conservative Party. Nobody in Canada wanted to be associated with the MAGA movement and Donald Trump, and that led to the Liberals making strides in the election and winning. So far, it looks to be 155 seats in the parliament. They need 172 seats for a majority. They're leading in 13 seats, so it looks like 168 of the 172 seats will be held by Liberals. Now, that won't be enough for the majority. They'll need another 4 seats to form a government, but there are 21 seats held by Bloc Québécois. The New Democratic Party won 5 seats, and the Green Party of Canada won 1 seat so far, and they will probably form a coalition government led by the Liberals. Good to see the Conservatives losing, and not only did the Conservatives lose, but the Trump of Canada, Pierre Poilievre, I think his name is, Poilievre. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I apologize. But the Conservative leader, who only months ago was expected to win the parliament and become the new prime minister, the Conservative leader has lost his own seat in Carleton. He was defeated in his own seat, so he won't even be returning to parliament. Fantastic news, and once again, a reminder that everything Trump touches dies. Amnesty International is out with its latest report claiming that Israel is perpetrating a, quote, live-streamed genocide, end quote, of Gaza, committing illegal acts with, quote, the specific intent of wiping out Palestinians. In the Amnesty International report, they say that the Israeli forces in Gaza have violated the United Nations Genocide Convention with acts that include, quote, causing serious bodily harm or mental harm to civilians and, quote, deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about their physical destruction, end quote. Israel has repeatedly, quote, denied, obstructed, and failed to allow and facilitate humanitarian access to Gaza and invaded the southern city of Rafah despite warnings by the international community and the International Court of Justice about the, quote, devastating effect it would have on the civilian population. And of course, people in the United States have been protesting this continued assault on the Palestinian people, this attempt of ethnic cleansing. We've heard Donald Trump talking about the United States taking over Gaza and turning it into the Dubai on the Mediterranean, some sort of Jared Kushner real estate dream. Israel, of course, strongly denies that they're committing genocide, saying it's taking actions in self-defense to protect itself against Hamas, because of the Hamas attack on October 7th that killed 1,200 people. And no doubt that the attack by Hamas, the surprise attack that killed civilians and took hostages, was horrific and barbaric and terrorism. But much like we overreacted to 9/11 and 3,000 of our people being killed by attacking a country that had nothing to do with it and inflicting 1 million casualties on the Iraqi people, much like our overreaction, Israel has overreacted to this Hamas attack. More than 51,000 people, including 17,000 children, have been killed by Israeli forces since that October 7th, 2023 Hamas attack. Hamas does not have the power to absolutely wipe out the state of Israel. But Israel has the power to absolutely wipe out Gaza and all of the Palestinian people. It's not a hard call for me. It's quite easy to see when you've got one set of people living in an open-air prison in conditions of squalor and ruin and rubble, where you're not allowing trucks of international aid of food and medicine to get to the people, when you're starving them out, when they have no sources of fresh water. And we're talking about an area the size of Boise's Treasure Valley with 5 times as many people. It's clear who the wrongdoers are in this situation. And for Israel to come back and say, well, we have to bomb the schools, we have to bomb the hospitals, we have to go after these places because Hamas uses these places as human shields. They use children as human shields. Well, look, if the cops showed up to a bank robbery and the bank robber came out holding a baby with a gun to the baby's head, you'd be cool if the cops just started shooting and killing the baby to take out the bank robber? No, if someone's using a human shield, you find a way to go around the human shield. And to me, it seems quite obvious that rather than doing the difficult work of having to go into the tunnels with their own soldiers and take the risk of their own soldiers' lives to go after the actual Hamas terrorists, Israel would rather just flatten buildings full of civilians rather than risk one IDF soldier's life. That's the genocide that's being perpetrated on the Palestinian people, and it needs to stop. Today in our Boycott Idaho segment, I've got to tell you about how excited law enforcement in Idaho is to get the chance to round up brown people and send them away to a concentration camp in El Salvador. The story comes here by way of the investigatewest.org, and it has to do with Owyhee County in Idaho. Now, Owyhee County is a vast rural county comprising the entire southwest corner of the state. Its primary economic engine is agriculture, and there are legions of undocumented migrants who perform most of the backbreaking farm labor jobs. Well, now, Owyhee County has entered into what's called a 287G agreement with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, our Gestapo. This program trains county sheriff's deputies to act as a force multiplier in performing immigration law enforcement. Under 287G, the deputies will be able to stop and question any person they believe looks like they're in the country illegally. If the person is arrested on state charges, the deputies can then also process them on federal charges of violating immigration law. Now, of course, we all know which kind of foreigner looks like they're in the country illegally, and they won't resemble Hugh Jackman, Nicole Kidman, or John Oliver. This same 287G program was shut down under President Obama because, surprise, multiple agencies in the program were found to have been racially profiling. Owyhee County is the first Idaho county to follow the advice of the governor, Brad Little, who in February encouraged all counties to enter into the 287G program. Aside from any new tech that's needed to process the immigration arrests, all the added costs of deputies taking on immigration enforcement duties are borne by the Idaho taxpayers. Activists point out that this program will lead to less cooperation with law enforcement in the immigrant community, fearful that reporting a crime or talking to police as a witness will lead to their deportation. Well, today in the Radical Rant, I thought I would tell you a story from my youth, and it's about how I discovered the concept of bullshit. Yeah, the concept of bullshit came to me when I was, I think, around 6th grade, and we had a tour that we did as part of one of our school field trips. Now, I grew up in Nampa, Idaho, part of Canyon County, Idaho, and one of the landmarks of Canyon County in my hometown of Nampa is Amalgamated Sugar, which has a huge sugar processing factory on the north end of Nampa. Very well known for the smell that you get from that sugar beet factory when they're processing. It is, it's a special smell, folks. It's the smell that lets you know you're home. So growing up there, we all knew about the sugar factory and the piles and piles of sugar beets that would be sitting outside waiting to be processed. So back in 6th grade, we had a field trip to go to the sugar beet factory and tour through it and see how it all worked. And, it was typical kind of factory stuff. Here's the vats, here's the trucks, here's the workers, etc. Until we get to the very end of the tour where they take us to the packaging section. So we'd learned all the way up to this point how the sugar beets are harvested and dumped there at the factory, and then they're put into these vats and then heated, and it separates the plant material and the sugars, and then the sugars are piped through this little thing and that little thing, and then eventually crystallized and dried, and then they all end up here at the packaging section. And as we got to the packaging section, I noticed how there were all these different bags that were available there. There's the bag for C&H, pure cane sugar. And there's the bag for amalgamated sugar. And there's the bag for Albertsons sugar. And there's the bag for Safeway sugar. And there's the bag for generic sugar. And so the lady who's doing the tour, she tells all of us little 6th grade kids that here's where all the sugar is now packaged and put into all the different bags. And that's when I got curious and said, excuse me, all these different bags, they're all getting the same sugar, right? And she says, well, yes, it's all the same sugar going into those bags. And I said, yeah, but like the generic sugar costs less than the Albertsons or Safeway sugar, and those cost less than the amalgamated or the C&H sugar. But it's all the same sugar, right? And she says, right. And I said, so why is there all these different bags when it's all just the same sugar? And she explained, well, those are all the different brands of sugar, the different brands that sell sugar. And I said, yeah, but it's the same sugar. So why would you have one bag of sugar that's $1, that's generic, and another bag of sugar that's brand named and it's $1.25? And she said, well, that's just their brand, and some people prefer different brands. And I said, so you mean to tell me that some people will pay $0.25 more for the sugar just because it's got a different colored bag? And she said, well, yes, that's exactly right. And that's where I discovered bullshit. It's like, that is such bullshit. Like, it's the same sugar. People are paying more just because it's got a specific logo on it. And of course, as I grew up, I learned all about marketing and advertising and creating demand. And well, I still think it's bullshit. Why are there multiple different bags of sugar when sugar is one product? Why should there be any more than one brand? This kind of dovetails on my story yesterday about the two different bags or two different containers of pre-made cookie dough. One that's divided into 24, the other that's divided into 12, but they're two separate brands. This is capitalism run amok, people. There is no reason why we need to have 7 different types of bags of sugar. Well, folks, that's all the time we've got for the podcast today. Sorry to drop you such a short episode, but duty calls. I got to go to work and make more money. The Radical Russ Show is produced, directed, researched, written, recited, posted, and catered by me, Radical Russ Belville, and governed by Creative Commons Share-alike licensing. My main theme is We Love the Herb by Herbal Nation, and today's interstitial music was played by me on the bass, playing some of Carol Kaye's most iconic bass lines. In order today, you heard The Beat Goes On by Sonny and Cher, These Boots Are Made for Walkin' by Nancy Sinatra, Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys, Feelin' All Right by Joe Cocker, Feelin' Groovy by Simon and Garfunkel, Wichita Lineman by Glenn Campbell, and The Cosby Show theme by Quincy Jones. What an amazing repertoire this woman had. Over 10,000 recording sessions. Check her out, carolk.com. News clips and social media posts were also reproduced under fair use copyright laws for commentary and analysis. And for our post-credits scene today, I just wanted to make note of the fact that we lost a plane. The USS Harry Truman is in the Gulf there and dealing with the Houthis, who are shooting missiles at it regularly, so it was involved in some zigzagging to try to dodge the missile strikes, and in doing so, lost a $60 million plane overboard. Just fell right off of the aircraft carrier. Boy, you thought you had a bad day at work. You've never lost an entire plane before. Well, sorry to hear about all that, but I hope everyone is okay. You can contact me by email at radicalruss@gmail.com. Call my message line at 877-RUSS-420. That's 877-877-420. And reach me by social media on Blue Sky as radicalruss.com and nowhere else. You can support this podcast financially by donating to @RadicalRuss on Venmo, RadRuss on Cash App, or via PayPal on my website at radicalruss.com. Get this podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, my website, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and until next time, take care of each other.
We love the earth. So you gotta protect it. The Mother Earth, you got to respect it. By using that good, what gives so much. All papers rerun. So you know we'll finally be on about the plans the mother has grown. This time around, you know, if you haven't heard, we love the earth. We love the earth. Hey, hey, hey. dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down.